To our daily show with CJ Nasello on RiverBender.com.
Open up the window, sucker. Let me catch my breath.
Welcome back into our daily show on this Monday morning. And man, we're rolling right around to 9:20. The owner of the Alton River Dragons, Steve Marso, joins us on the phone now. An eventful year to say the least, Steve.
Yes, to say the least. Who would have ever thought of being put out of your park by a sinkhole? You know, it's a crazy experience. We did the best we could with it, and definitely thrilled to get the notice yesterday that we can go back to Lloyd Hopkins Field come this weekend.
Well, and you know, that has to mean so much for not only you, but every embodiment of the Alton River Dragons. You know, I've heard your comments and read them in various publications, but it seems like, Steve, you know, you guys really tapped into something special here in this community. Take us through how the community itself and the region rallied behind you guys during this just catastrophic event.
You know, everyone's just been so awesome about the whole situation, from fans to players to vendors to our, part-time staff, press box staff. Everybody's just been awesome, for what could have been a really bad situation in terms of, players could have left. Our part-time staff that came out to the alternate sites to help could have just been like, I'm not driving the extra distance. It's not worth it. But everyone really rallied behind. And, I can't tell you how many people have stepped up and told me, hey, anything you need, we're here to help. I mean, the community has just been awesome. I can't say enough good things about it.
Well, and I know that, you experienced nothing similar to a sinkhole, but you had an event previously with the flood in Waterloo. Did that experience help you with how the mentality was this time around with this event?
Oh, absolutely. Back in, I guess it was 2008, I owned a team in Waterloo, Iowa. And I think our ballpark, it'd always flood every year up to the ballpark, but never actually came in. Well, unfortunately, June of 2008, it actually put the entire ballpark, parking lot and ballpark, under, I think it was about 11 feet of water for 29 days. And so this was more of a surreal experience. Number one, was so happy that nobody got hurt, obviously, on the soccer field. But to go in there and get supplies from our ballpark and to see this just beautiful ballpark, with the turf field and the video board and everything else at the park that we couldn't use. But for me, it was more, okay, we didn't lose all of our things. In the flood, we lost everything. Whereas here, we just lost the ability to play at our field. So we just, we rallied and called around to a lot of fields, and luckily they were accommodating, and we just made it work through the end of the season.
Well, and what's that? What was that thought process like? Especially when you have something like a sinkhole, where right off the bat, whenever it happened, there's a lot of confusion. Or is the park open yet, or can we play here? You had to adapt really quickly. And what's your thought just for the partners that you've had to kind of team up with, including SIUE, Bethalto, that it seemed like definitely reacted pretty quickly with you?
Yeah, Bethalto especially, they were fantastic. I mean, their park staff, their mayor, their, Civic Memorial Athletic Director, Todd Hanford, everybody was just awesome. I mean, they were working hard, getting the grounds ready. They really wanted to have us for more events, but I think when it got to be a long-term solution that we needed, we really needed to go to more of a college field like an SIUE because of the caliber of players that we have on our team. But they were, it was very confusing at the beginning, because when I got the call saying the soccer field fell, well, what did that mean for us? Initially we were told, oh, you'll just be out for a couple days. And obviously that turned into, a month and a half, 5 weeks, whatever it was. So yeah, we were just kind of on the fly every single day. I would wake up and be like, okay, what's the next challenge today? What do we have to figure out? And logistically making sure we had enough stuff for giveaways, concessions, whatever else we were doing. And just, patchwork it together, just to get it together for the fans and the coach and the players.
Absolutely. And, speaking of the fans, too, it seemed like they were really ready to go anywhere you needed them to be to support this team. Take me through that core group and just how their motivation kind of propelled you this last couple of months.
Yeah, that's what was probably the most motivating thing, besides the players and the part-time staff. But the fans that showed up to these games were the true River Dragons fans that really loved coming to the games and really wanted to support the team, wanted to see it for the long term. I can't think, I could go on with names forever as to how the people that showed up and supported us and really just showed positive energy in what could have been a much more difficult situation.
Absolutely. And, as we're, just talking about this sinkhole event, you hear the news yesterday that, we're going to reopen the park. We're taping this on Thursday, August the 15th. The park opens tomorrow, August the 16th at 7 a.m. Obviously, I'm sure you would have liked to have been, having your season still going right now to be able to hop back in. But what are the thoughts just on that first game back for the River Dragons at Lloyd Hopkins Field? And I'd like to talk with you about the other things that the River Dragons do for Lloyd Hopkins outside of the team.
Oh, it's going to be one big celebration, one big welcome home to everybody. Hopefully we have a huge crowd. Hopefully everybody comes out to support. And, it's nice that we're being let in now, because now we have, I guess, 8-9 months to plan to get ready for just a fantastic, year 5 opening day. And I just think it's going to be one big gathering, one big community party for everybody.
And on top of that, too, Steve, I wanted to point out that you guys, and correct me if I'm wrong, just because I never directly asked you, but it seemed like you guys were the organizer and the spearheader of club teams coming to play at Lloyd Hopkins. And it displaced a lot of things. Have you had conversations with some of the local club organizations about what next year looks like for them?
Yeah, we've actually had a lot of positive response. We're
Good.
back. We've signed Lewis and Clark is back on for the season. They were definitely excited to get going. I had the conversation with the Marquette people, I believe it was yesterday morning, and they're full on board. The NCBA, we have them signed for Division II for the next, I believe, 2 seasons, so they're on board. Still talking to them about Division I, and that I think was more up in the air, not based on this situation, but more on where we were going with some improvements at the ballpark. We also are, I think, bidding on a Division III tournament potentially, and then just looking at any other tournaments that we can bring in. We've got a company that we deal with that comes and does tournaments September, October. They're super excited to get back out there. So the response has just been great.
On top of that, too, the response from the players I thought was pretty impressive, dealing with this because, whenever we're talking about just the guys in general, they could have easily put the cleats up and said, you know what, let's just focus on the college season. For you, it's got to feel pretty good that they believed in this team, they believed in this community enough to weather the storm, quite literally.
Yeah, that was one thing early on where I was thinking, we're committed on our end to keep this thing going. But in my mind, I'm thinking these guys are 20, 21-year-old baseball players. Are they going to just get frustrated by the movement, having to go to different fields all the time? And, I started to feel them out as we moved along. I was like, hey, guys, thanks for hanging in. Appreciate it. And they all honestly kind of looked at me a little quizzically like, why are you thanking me? And most of them that I spoke to, they were just like, we love this. This is awesome. I had a couple that were like, yeah, it's been a little tough, but, we're making the best of it. But the positivity out of these guys and the class was just awesome and just impressive.
Well, and, I think you guys finished in a good spot, with everything that was being thrown out there. And, it seems like the weather wasn't really the best friend for, the team towards the last.
No, that was tough.
Right. And so going ahead, have you had conversations yet with some of the current players about maybe coming back? Any of the coaches that you'd like to tease us with so far, or is that still a little too early?
So from a player standpoint, I did talk to a few towards the end of the season. And the one thing that's changed so much about this business now is it's so based on where the coaches want them to go. So I talked to probably 4 or 5 of the guys that were really key members of the team, and every one of them said, we'd love to come back, but it really is up to our coach. So I think that, that's something we'll be addressing once we figure out who our field manager is and coaches going forward. I will say I have extended the offer to Noah Suarez. I think he did an awesome job this year. I'd love to have him back, but I think, as is the players, his situation is dependent on his college coaching job as well. So I think I'll visit with him in the next week or two and see where his situation's at and just get back to planning for some good River Dragon baseball next year.
Well, and honestly, on top of that all too, Steve, is the community sponsors too, that it seems like they're just willing to really support this team. What's your message to the sponsors that, supported you guys through the sinkhole, and what's 2025 look for the group as a whole that way?
Yeah, from a sponsorship standpoint, really all I could say is thank you. Every single one of them that I've spoken with has been so fully supportive of us. And a lot of them, they just felt bad for the situation. From year one, the sponsors have all been great. I really call them more partners than anything because I see it as a partnership and not just a sponsorship. But, they've been great. And I just really want to thank them. And, look forward to welcoming them back in 2025. I really believe the majority of them will be back from my conversations with them. And, they're really the lifeblood of the River Dragons. They, through their support and partnership, we're able to do what we do.
And what I think is really important to touch on, and I know that we've touched on it in different fashions here on Riverbender and other publications, is the community's involvement with host families. When do you guys start looking for host families? I know that you'll need them for the next year. How can someone reach out if they want to be a part of the team in that regard?
Yeah, probably the best way would be to reach out to me. My email address is alton@prospectleague.com would probably be the best route. Host families are kind of an ongoing situation. Sometimes we've got a very, very good core group of them. I love our host families are just awesome. But we do lose a couple every year just because people, change in life, or they move, or, maybe they move houses, move cities, maybe don't have the space for them anymore. But then we always seem to pick up a few extras. And, the host family program is just amazing because it's really the player becomes part of the family. And, when I first got involved in baseball, where we were doing host families, it seemed like a really unique concept to me. I kind of like, we're bringing just somebody you don't know into the house. And then I started seeing these families that connected with these kids. And years later, we're going to weddings and graduations, and they really do become a part of the family. And, even seeing our River Dragon host families, how so many of them still connect with players from years 1 through 3 before this season. And it's just such an incredible program. I just can't say enough good things about it.
Well, and as we're looking towards 2025, after the year that was 2024, what are some events coming down the pipeline? Can we stay tuned to any accolades being handed down, or has that been done so far by the league?
That has not been done. There hasn't been any awards from the league or anything like that. That typically, I think, would come more. That might come from the winter meetings. We have 2 meetings, the fall, and then I think we have the winter meetings. And if I recall, those get voted on at the winter. So nothing from them. I mean, the league members have been fantastic. Everyone's been super supportive and, very sympathetic at the same time to our situation because, who would think you're displaced for the majority of your season due to a sinkhole? Definitely a unique situation.
Another thing that's really important is the fact that, you really got out there, Steve, yourself and said, I'm committed. I'm committed to the area. You've said that personally to me multiple times.
Absolutely.
How important was it for you to really get in front of this for the public on your own and to just say, guys, we're here? There might be a sinkhole, but my goal is to be right here in the city of Alton.
I think it was very important for me to get out there and let people know that we were committed to the Alton area, the surrounding region, because, a lot of people could have just said enough is enough. There was a tremendous expense that went into continuing with the season, but my family felt that it was important because Alton has been just beyond amazing to me and my family. From day one that we showed up, as to how they treated me, welcomed us into the ballpark, welcomed us into the community. Our goal is to be here for the next however many years the city of Alton will have us is how long we want to have it. My kids are already debating back and forth who gets to run the team down the line. So yeah, that's a whole nother argument at home.
Well,
but yeah, no, we were absolutely committed and really wanted everybody to know that we were here to stay.
Well, and Steve, really, just from me personally, I thought it was really good of you to get out in front and kind of let the public know, hey, we're here. And as you look towards 2025, there's still a little bit, left to unpack, I'm sure, for you guys with the sinkhole situation and what that looks like going forward. But I'm not one of those guys that plays the guessing game. I like to wait until we know for sure. So what we do know is that you are coming back in 2025. And what's that final message to the community? 2024 literally sucked into the ground, but 2025 looks pretty darn promising.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess what I've talked to people before about this is we're just hoping that this is maybe a 5-week blip in the history of the River Dragons, just another thing to add to the book. But, we continue to grow. We're looking to bring in a really good team next year, continue to add on more and more events. And, this season I really want to do a lot more promotions, giveaways, stuff to really – for year 5 to really excite the fans, give them a good reason to come out and support us. And, hopefully we've shown through the last few weeks that we are committed. And for that, hopefully they'll return, return out to support the River Dragons.
Absolutely. And Steve Marso, you always got an advocate for you over here on Riverbender. And thank you so much for your time today. Best of luck this off season. And whenever you have more news to share, feel free to share it here on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate everything, all the support, and we'll see you back in Alton real soon.
Well, you know who's always in Alton is Sparks Junk Removal, a wonderful supporter of our show, and they are just taking the Riverbend region by storm. Those purple yellow trash cans popping up and mating like bunny rabbits all across the 618. I'm telling you, Steve, it's something special. She took on the big boy of the trash company because she knew that she could do a better service to you, service to the community by keeping the roads clean, all that good stuff. For 30 years, she's been the queen of junk, and now for the next 30, queen of junk and trash. Go to sparksjunkremoval.net and reclaim your space today.